Hello, Lisa Muggeridge talking again. So in the last video we looked at why the UK Labour Party can't be elected again, and through that prism we looked at all the different institutions that kind of are centred around this crisis and are not functioning. But in actual fact, what's actually demonstrated there is a really interesting phenomena. This is a mediating class and a bunch of institutions, most of which can fall away without any problem at all. The others will adjust and they will evolve beyond this crisis. And what they actually, while they have generated political instability in the last 10 years, and while this has been kind of central to issues like Brexit and austerity, they are actually a symptom of a very stable country, that we have a mediating class where instability demonstrated and that democracy took care of them is a sign of stability. In addition, they provide an excellent mirror into a window into very, very localised dysfunction around what Gordon Brown called the nexus between media, finance and politics. But this is only a small part of our system. Now, the UK, historically, we have a reputation as a very stable country. Our prime as an economy, our overvalued housing market are all dependent on our stability as an economy. We are one of the most stable countries in the world. And one of the problems that's occurred as political instability has been generated by this tiny nexus is that actually the UK has become synonymous with uncertainty and risk. And this is at a period where we are sat on the fault line of what's called a Thucydides trap. A Thucydides trap is where an ascending power, where the balance of world power is changing, one power is ascending and another is declining. And historically, this has never happened without a war. Thucydides was writing in the period of the Persians and the Greeks a very long time ago. But this is a term that's kind of commonly understood. Now, the UK was part of what's called the UK-US Washington Consensus, which was the political and economic settlement that defined the latter half of the 20th century. And in the last quarter of the 20th century, this was defined by an economic settlement called neoliberalism, which was, the term is hegemonic. So this was a system which dominated the world. But in actual fact, the balance of world power has changed. China have emerged as a major power, and we're currently in a state of flux. And while the US are still a dominant power, the UK has to very much redefine its relationship with the rest of the world and accept a very, very diminished place. We have basically kind of booted ourselves off the world stage. But this has happened without World War III. So this is actually, this is not terrible. Coronavirus as a crisis, a global pandemic, means the whole world is dealing with the same issue, which has highlighted how we are connected, how we are separated, how our systems work. And in each country, it's also kind of probably generated a post-coronavirus economic stimulus, which should translate into some form of economic boom, along with the ascendancy of China and all these other powers. So what I said I would look at in this video is what's maintaining domestic stability. Now, the problem is that this tiny nexus of media, finance and politics are projecting our image to the rest of the world, but in actual fact, underneath, we are still a very stable country. And what I'm going to look at in this video is a number of factors that contribute to our stability. Now, if we take the 2008 financial crisis, at that point, it became apparent that there were substantial problems in our banking industry. In fact, there are still problems with, aging infrastructure, the size of our banks, and this is a bit of a problem. Sometimes it feels like Canary Wharf is a bit of a toilet where cowboys go to trade risky. And we've done considerable damage to our reputation for stability with this nexus of finance, media, and politics. But we also have extremely mature financial institutions, and one of the institutions I wanted to talk about was the Bank of England. So in the UK, we have our own currency, which is a very, very important thing, which we've had, well, like right back as far as Ethelred the Unready, in pre-Norman England. The fact that we maintained our currency always meant that we had a source of stability, and this remains the case. The Bank of England is currently presided over by a guy called Andrew Bailey, and then previously it was Mark Carney. And I think it's fair to say that in the period where the political instability that Brexit was part of, that austerity was part of, that the death of the Labour Party was part of, it's men like Mark Carney and Andrew Bailey and this institution at the core of it who've contributed significantly to our stability. One of the issues that I have is that Monetary Policy Committee level need to understand the systems that I discuss, but they don't because they're considered marginal and the economics they use can't see them. So social care, safeguarding, local authorities. We have a substantial mix of institutions in the UK. We have local authorities where systems emerge from the ground up, the rule of law and new duties develop from the ground up. We have centrally planned institutions. We have a public-private mix. And we have systems which naturally reflect the crossover between the market economy, the care economy, and naturally reflect evolution and change. One of the reasons the loss of neoliberal economics is not a problem in this country is because our institutions and the data that they produce naturally reflects change. As we move away from economics as a bullshit belief system and start using data properly, because we have the technology to do that now, which we didn't before, we can now model on a massive basis. We just have to use the data our institutions produce and have that used properly at Monetary Policy Committee level. This should happen naturally through crisis. In actual fact, the recent £500 payment that went through tax credits should provide a boost to economic growth, which should bring home to the Treasury that actually these systems are important. The Treasury is another very, very important stabilising institution. It has roots back to Henry VII's bloody bedroom. This is a mature institution at the core of government, and these are immensely stabilising institutions. Now, within the rest of our system, we have social care, we have a very advanced education system. It's hugely problematic because the economics we've been using is hollowed out institutions, privatisation, academisation, privatisation of systems has often been used very, very badly. And we have to recognise, we have to deal with the crisis that has generated. But we have across our society very mature institutions, and as a result we have a very educated, very healthy population. Austerity used the whip of hunger in a way that's actually unlawful in this country, and it's actually generated a malnutrition time bomb, a social care time bomb. We'll learn that through crisis, but these crises will correct our systems naturally, and austerity, coronavirus, trans rights activism even have all contributed to this correction. But underneath it we have systems which mean that we have an educated, healthy population who actually are very, very diverse. When you hear the arguments about the working class on Twitter, what you're actually hearing is a mediating class discussing their relationship with the rest of the country, who they only understand as the working class. In actual fact, the red wall is the consequence of this. Labour cannot even imagine the constituents there, and the Tories have been able to clean up in this area. Because actually the North is not flat caps and whippets. We're a very, very advanced, modern, pragmatic country. Now, I think we have like the most educated population in our entire history. Now, Westminster is pretty puerile. The tribalism between left and right that's portrayed out through our political press is almost obsolete. But in actual fact, one of the stabilisers in this country is the constituency MP system. No matter how obnoxious what is going on in Twitter is, and how much you have MPs trying to manage a media message where they pretend they don't know stuff, you can make an appointment and go and see your MP. When system failure occurs, it manifests in MPs' offices. So within Westminster, they remain aware of this. The family courts crisis, while confidentiality in the court system meant it couldn't actually happen openly, because MPs were the means by which people would complain, MPs were aware of this. This is a very important stabilising system. Another very important system is the monarchy. The Crown keeps our institutions separate. It keeps them stable. It underpins separation between our justice system, who are independent of Westminster, which is a very stable, evolving rule of law. We are about to go through a period of instability with our monarchy, which is actually very necessary where they evolve. Queen Elizabeth is probably not likely to be the Queen for very long. Prince Philip has passed away, which is very, very sad. We're seeing the media generating crisis over Prince Harry and his wife Meghan. you know, which is largely actually very important in understanding intersectionality and the way that racism even reproduces at that level. And while the media threaten to destabilize the monarchy, they're going through a transition. We're likely to see King Charles quite soon, I think. And while actually I know people are a bit wary of, you know, Prince Charles and what will happen when he becomes king, his contempt for the media might mean that this institution can transition. They are already reproducing. We have William and the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate I think her name is, and they have children. Harry and Meghan have like a child, and they're actually kind of striking out and trying new things in the US, which might end up being very, very beneficial. So our monarchy should continue to reproduce, but it's an immensely important stabilizing institution, and it's going through a period where this is the first generation of monarchy who have the right to say, actually, we don't want to do aspects of this. We will not be beholden to this media organization. We are central to the functioning of this country. Our monarchy in this country largely allow us to function as a republic. The Queen's speech is about her demonstrating her political impartiality and saying what she is told to say. These are very, very important stabilizers. Now, the structure of the UK as a country is really important. We are not one country. We are Scotland, we are Wales, we are Northern Ireland, we are England, and we are very close to Ireland. One of the problems with Brexit is it was carried out without even thinking about the impact on Northern Ireland, and luckily the politicians who have emerged in Northern Ireland are very clear that they emerged from a war. We are likely, a natural consequence of globalization is the federalization of power upwards and the devolution downwards. And initially that's manifested as money kind of federalizing up. But in actual fact, what we might find is, you know, questions about Scottish independence, questions about a united Ireland, questions about the rebalancing of the economy and political power to the north. Boris Johnson is beholden to the Red Wall, who Labour neglected. It's actually the Southeast voters who are more likely to vote Labour at the moment than anywhere else, because kind of, I think maybe they share the class identity of the Labour Party. So we are in the middle of a rebalancing of the economy, a redrawing of the political map, which, if you take your eyes off Westminster, has been going on for a good solid while now. These issues are not going to go away. They will play out as crisis. Now, one of the benefits of this country is that while we have a problem that's rooted in the economics that shapes the 20th century being over and we haven't adjusted to it, because we have such healthy, mature institutions, the data that those institutions provide actually gives us information that our economics as a belief system cannot see. Often the political instability is about politicians who don't want to acknowledge this. But these are politicians who are aware of system failure through their constituency office. Most of our economics problems could be solved by just using the data our institutions provide, ignoring the economics that shape the 20th century. And in actual fact, in Harvard, you know, it's their data science classes that are kind of superseding economics as a discipline. And that's happening quite naturally. The UK has an advantage because our systems are so mature that the data they produce is pretty useful, and we can fall back on it even when we can't use that economics anymore. Now, all in all, we are a domestic, cohesive population. We are an educated, healthy, domestic, cohesive population with mature institutions and a very stable country. And the instability that's been demonstrated by Brexit, by the media culture around the BBC, around the death of the Labour Party, this is localised dysfunction with a very stable country underneath it. These people will adjust or they'll fall away, but as they contribute very little, it doesn't matter. The media landscape has changed and they will adjust or they fall away. That's what's meant by market forces. So in actual fact, even though it feels very bad at the moment, our position in the world is changing. We are a very stable country. And because we actually, you know, the component parts of the UK, devolution may be an issue, you know, a united Ireland may emerge from Brexit, you know, Edinburgh, Dublin, Belfast, they may all end up benefiting from a situation that will harm London a great deal. But the structure of London is also very, very important. London existed as an international centre before England existed. It was established kind of, well, it emerged under the Romans, but London is the one place in the country where everybody can get there within 2 or 3 hours. You know, it exists separately from the structure of the country, but it also means that a financial crisis, instability that hits Canary Wharf, you know, it actually, while the structure of the housing market is that inflated house prices in London pull up the housing bubble in the rest of the country, and we do have risk with an overvalued housing market, we also have the structure of London means that actually a crisis can happen there and a rebalancing can happen away from the southeast, and the country will actually just survive it quite well. I'm going to look at kind of periods in our history where we have had to do that as we look through the kind of history playlist that I'll be doing on a Sunday. Now in the next video, next Wednesday, about our current situation, I'm going to look at how the UK, with all its kind of sources of stability, redefines its relationship with Europe and the US. Now, our role as a bridge between Europe and the US is the first most important kind of factor in our stability internationally. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to look at our relationships with the rest of the world and how we fit into this new multipolar world, where the East is more relevant, where China are going through an intellectual and economic boom that actually we're kind of missing a little bit. And I'm going to look at our relationships with the rest of the world and how we redefine our relationships. But in the history playlist that I begin on Sunday, I'm going to start with Neolithic China. One of the problems in the UK is that we have a tendency to view ourselves with a very insular view of our own history and its relationship to the rest of the world. And what I'm going to start doing with that history playlist is I'm going to start with Neolithic China. And that's on Sunday. So next Wednesday, I will be looking at our relationships with the EU and the US in the modern day, and on Sunday I will be looking at Neolithic China. I'll be looking at the Yellow River civilization. I'll be looking at kind of, and gradually over time, looking at our place in the world in terms of that context. Now, I'm still crowdfunding for £350 for equipment, microphone and books and research materials to improve the quality of these videos. I'll put my PayPal and my Patreon underneath. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I'm really liking doing YouTube again, and thank you very much for the response to the last few videos.